Hello, it's Anna and Sophie from Soundyard here. We make Chris Skinner's Countryside podcast, and we've got something very exciting to share with you. We have a new service that's being launched, and it's called Spoken Stories.
Spoken Stories is all about recording the voices and memories of your loved ones in outstanding quality, so they can be enjoyed for generations to come. For example, you know the story that Grandma tells that everyone in the family has heard before. Well, Spoken Stories is about getting those stories down and preserving them for your family history. Spoken Stories is about gifting someone the time to capture these personalities and unique voices.
We record your loved ones' tales, whether it's their whole life story so far or something more specific like a life-changing event. It is a gorgeous experience, and what you're left with is a beautiful monologue that really captures the essence of that person.
Think of it like an audio portrait, and take a listen to a snippet of this one from Diane's spoken story, recorded in her beautiful garden.
I was born in 1951 at Newmarket, and unfortunately I didn't see Mum for a year. I was looked after by a lovely nurse called Diane, my name, because my mum had TB when I was born. And so my mother never worked because with her problem with her, lungs, she had to go and have it sort of pumped up every so often. She used to do a lot of dressmaking, so she always made our clothes years ago. But yeah, she was a lovely mum, yeah, and Dad as well, yeah. That's very nice childhood I had, yeah, very nice. Yeah. I got married February the 16th, 1974. The weather was gorgeous. I ended up having to put on a big sort of T-shirt under my wedding dress I didn't need. I had a lovely one of those transparent umbrellas in case it rained, and it was just a beautiful day. I think I'm always sort of quite cheerful. I mean, if I go down the Luke and deliver some eggs to somebody, I'll meet somebody and chat, and then Paul say, "Where have you been?" I said, "I've been chatting to people." That's just my way. That's just how I am. We've always lived here. We had this built in 1974. They put the footings down in February and we moved in the August. Years ago, I used to go around the village on a bike, and when I had Ian, he'd sit on the back. We live in a lovely area. We've got lovely neighbours. They help us all out, which you all do with neighbours, and that's very, very nice. And as I said to Paul, I'm hoping we can keep this place on until, well, I don't want to move from here until I go out in a brown box. I hope that's not too soon.
If you'd like more information about Spoken Stories and to take advantage of our special introductory offer, you can head to www.soundyard.org/spoken stories.
And keep listening after this episode with Chris, and you'll hear another example of a spoken story. It's a view of the world from a 6-year-old.
Chris Skinner's Countryside podcast with Matthew Gudgeon.
We've waded our way into this self-planted woodland, successional woodland, as Chris always tells us. And we're on High Ash Farm on a very grey, blustery and cold day. It's quite miserable, really, but cheers you up being here, Chris Skinner, and thank you very much for inviting us once again.
You're more than welcome, Matthew, and all our wonderful listeners who tune in to the podcast religiously. Yes, that's our reward of very happy listeners who log in to what we have to say. And this is rapidly becoming my favourite area on the farm. It's just 2 hectares of I'd like to call it newly planted woodland, but there's been no human activity here. We came here during late summer, early autumn, and looked at some of the fate of the young oak trees here that have been barked completely round, and they're about 20 feet tall by grey squirrels. And yes, a bit of a challenge because I haven't taken any control measures on them. And yet the habitat here is fantastic now. There's rough tussocky grassland. We'll just walk in a bit more. We'll just come into the edge of it. The trees are naturally quite well spaced out. Just got to wade through some stinging nettles, which are just about over. And in front of us are some very small oak trees and lots of tussocky grassland. So it's quite open habitat. And it's absolutely superb and ideal for one bird that I know more about really than any other bird on the farm, and it's called woodcock. And it'll surprise a lot of people because it's closely related to curlew and sandpipers, so it's a wader. And we have our own resident woodcock here. There weren't many breeding in the United Kingdom before about 1800, and I think because we started planting commercial forestry and also management for pheasants, in both of those create a really good habitat for woodcock. So they've deserted the salt marshes and the estuaries and inhabit areas like this, which is scrubby woodland, quite big open area around us. We've got an open canopy. It's quite damp down this bottom end of this area of woodland because we're quite near a stream, and so that's brilliant for them, sort of earth that they can probe into. They've got very long beaks, about 3 inches long, I suppose, and we think they're the most beautiful cryptic camouflaged birds, certainly in this country. When you see them, I mean, if there was one crouched down on the ground and in areas where there's bracken, which they love, they just become invisible. The plumage on them is absolutely stunning, and yet it's brown and black. They have got sort of bars across the top of their head which run from side to side. The only other bird you could really confuse them with is a snipe, and they like really, really boggy land. Woodcock do like boggy land for feeding in, so when we got this damp area down at the bottom here, and I brought Rat, the demented terrier, with us.
Where's he gone?
And that's the whole point. He's meant to stay quite close, and he won't be far away. And the idea is to see if we can flush a woodcock out, and that would be a real treat. It's a bit like looking for a needle in a haystack, if I'm honest.
The sad thing from woodcock's point of view is that in many areas they've got a target on their head, haven't they?
Yes, right. We've got 2 new words for our countryside dictionary, if you like. One's called jinxing and one's called roading. Well, I'll explain jinxing and why they're a favourite target for shooters. Because when they fly up, although they've got very broad wings and they fly quite swiftly, but they zigzag, and that makes them a really difficult target to shoot, and it's called jinxing. And so they kind of have a price on their head, and I think there's still a rare whisky company which offers a prize if you're witness to shoot a left and a right woodcock. You've got to shoot them in succession with both barrels, one in each barrel, and then you become a very exclusive member of something called the Woodcock Club. And I think it's still in existence. It certainly was in the very recent past. So they're a game bird. And game birds are birds that you can eat, but they're also sporting targets. But bear in mind, woodcock's got about 4 ounces of flesh on its body, and there is a recipe in Mrs. Beaton's cookbook for them. And you cook them with the head on and their entrails still in, so with the gizzards still complete, and they're meant to be some sort of delicacy.
I think I'll stick to fish fingers tonight. I remember there was a story, wartime Britain, with the restrictions on rationing, and the famous playwright Noel Coward at the London Hotel was served up woodcock.
Right.
And he took one look at it and said it was more wood than cock.
Yes. And that sort of raises a smile and takes me back to why I know quite a lot about woodcock, because on High Ash Farm, when my father took over the tenancy of the farm way back in the early 1940s, there were horses doing all the work here, and the head teasman That's the gentleman that looked after the horses, the working horses on the farm. I just heard a bark in the distance, so I hope he's not run into a sheep's electric fence and got a shock, in which case he'll come back and find us that was the rat, or he's chasing something, or he's flushed a woodcock and we haven't been able to see it.
You can hear him in the background.
Yes, I heard a bark. Anyway, the head teasman, his name was Nelson Woodcock. Right, and his wife Nellie worked in the farmhouse alongside my mother, helping to run the farmhouse, making cheese and butter as well. And they had 3 sons, Tinny or Tenacious, with very long names. Duke was the second one, and the eldest son, who worked on Horace Farm for 40 years, was called Horatio, and we just knew him as Horace. Yep. So one Saturday lunchtime, I was about 7 years old. My father, very casually, as we were sitting down eating our dinner, said, I've had quite a good morning. I've shot 2 woodcock. And do you know, at my age, I honestly thought he'd shot Horace and Duke. It wasn't till much later that I found out that there's a bird called a woodcock.
Don't worry, Dad, I'll give evidence in your favour.
Yes. Now, woodcock, also it's in a lot of the Shakespearean novels, is a very simple-minded person, because woodcock, you can play a trick on them, because on woodland floors, if you lay some sticks out in the shape of a V, the woodcock won't walk over the sticks. It will just sort of... I can hear an incessant, rather anxious bark.
Yes, I can. Shall we go and find him?
I think we'll have to walk through here and see what's happened.
There's a road in Norwich called Woodcock Road, of course.
There is, yes.
Where is he?
Did I get through?
Oh, we found him. You come back, rat. What have you been up to then?
Well done. I don't know what he had found, but unfortunately it wasn't woodcock. I think there was a rabbit or a hare involved in this tussocky grass here. But so Shakespeare, in several of the novels, and I think it's in Taming of the Shrew, some of his plays that he did, often mentions woodcock, and it's very simple-minded people. But the way Horace, Duke, and Tinny all worked, they were absolutely anything but simple-minded. They were completely dedicated. So it just brings back huge memories.
And they weren't shot?
No, they certainly weren't shot. So we've got this wonderful area of open woodland, and during daylight hours, because nocturnal birds like owls and nightjar aren't active in daylight, and that's true of woodcock as well. They're almost completely nocturnal, so they'll sleep up during daylight hours, which is how you're able to eat them complete with their entrails, if you do cook a woodcock complete with its gizzard still in. Because they've digested their food normally when they're shot, they feed at night, and their main diet is worms. They like to probe into damp soil and eat their worms and then digest them during the hours of daylight. But they will fly out, particularly we've got our own breeding woodcock, and there's another bird with woodcock in its name as well, and it's called a woodcock pilot. And if you don't know what one of those is, it's used across the country, particularly in Yorkshire, because at this time of the year, just at the beginning of winter, we have migrant woodcock coming in at about the same time that another very small bird becomes quite visible. It's called the goldcrest. And the Latin name of the goldcrest, it comes through as kind of woodcock pilots. And it was thought that goldcrests would hop on the back of a woodcock and come across the North Sea and guide it to our shores. But you do have to smile at these very antiquated stories.
I think it's wonderful though. It's quite romantic.
It's even more romantic, because the woodcock will carry its young, and it's now been authenticated. These tiny little chicks, woodcock nests on the ground, sort of oval-shaped nests, oval-shaped eggs, I should say, and so as soon as they're hatched out, the little chicks open their eyes and they feed themselves under the watchful eye of Mum, who does all the incubating. And she will move her chicks about by picking them up with her feet, and one's actually been seen on a woodcock's back, the chick. You see it with grebes sometimes on water, where you'll have 2 or 3 of the chicks on the mum's back, and they swim along like a little flotilla.
Our ancestors must have seen that and thought it was a goldcrest.
Yes, exactly that, yes. So some of these sort of myths, some have some truth attached to them. But beautiful, beautiful birds are woodcock here, the resident ones, augmented at this time of the year.
There'll be some round here, will
There is. This is the trouble. This is the trick with woodcock. You can walk through here and they won't fly up until they're almost under your feet, almost down. So if we carry on walking up a little bit, we might be lucky. Now we've been rejoined by Rat. Here he comes. Good boy, Rat. And we might be able to flush a woodcock, because this is perfect habitat for them. I've walked out a few times. Oh, good, he's running off ahead. And
Go on, Rat.
we need a whole sort of pack of dogs to really flush them out, but they're so quick. They'll just come up straight in front of you and almost scare you. So it's wonderful, wonderful birds. They have a very long beak, as I mentioned, about 40 millimetres long, 3 inches or so long. They probe down into the ground, and there's a special trick, because obviously if they're going to catch a worm, you have to open your beak up to get the worm in the soil. So they're probed down perhaps 2 inches into the soil, and just when you think about it, they're going to get a beak full of soil with a worm on the end, but not a bit of it. The tip of the beak of a woodcock is flexible and it opens up. They have a special little muscle right along the top of the beak, and it opens just the tip so they can grab the worm, pull it out without having a whole beak full of mud. Beautiful, clever birds. So we've got one more little bit to walk through. Let's just go up here. We might be lucky, but there's some quite dense conifer trees to our right, and as it's been raining most of the day, that's perhaps where the woodcock are. Rat's gone off in the right direction.
And the rain's coming in sideways now.
Yes, it is. Yes, you have to stay inside. I know how to treat a boy. But at least we sort of examine the Norfolk countryside in the heat of the summer, the sort of promise of spring when we have the bluebells and sort of the snowdrops before them, and then we've had the wonderful autumn colours, and now we're just sort of heading into winter. 1st of December, believe it or not.
Yeah, I can't believe it. Here we go towards the shortest day of the year.
Yes, we're only about 3 weeks away from the shortest day. So it's a grey, gloomy day, but it's just a celebration of a very, very beautiful bird. Scolopax rusticula, the woodcock, my favourite bird at High Ash Farm. It has to be. And the story about Duke and Horace, I'll never forget it.
We've driven a few minutes to the other side of the farm here. It's still flowing in sideways. It's a quite a bracing day, quite fresh, and you've just been peeling this large log here. Is it something you do often?
No. No. Well, I'd like to call it a Christmas log, but it's not made of chocolate, this one. And anyway, we've been looking as we've progressed through autumn at some of the fungi on the farm, and we did quickly examine one at the base of an ash tree quite recently, and it's a notorious fungus. It's called honey fungus, Armillaria malea, the scientific name, and it sort of often attacks willow trees, most deciduous trees. In fact, oak is another favourite suspect, and normally you only see the fruiting body of the fungus. That's when you know, like with our field mushrooms, you see the portion of the fungi which is there all the year. In the autumn they put up the fruiting bodies to reproduce themselves in the form of spores, but this particular fungi has its normal fruiting bodies. They've all gone back down to the ground now and rotted into the woodland floor, but the fungus is still active, and it's killed this massive oak tree here, and the oak tree sadly blew over in Storm Bert last week, and I brought the trunks here, and I'm not sure quite what to do with them. I've chopped all the top up and made it into a lovely bug bank on the woodland floor for things like slow worms, grass snakes, and all the soil invertebrates that inhabit the woodland floor, and that will return back to the floor. But the bark is peeling off this giant old oak tree, and it's quite sad. It's really sound, you can see. But Matthew, when we look at the outside, just under the bark's all gone white and it's beginning to rot. And you can see all sorts of different fungi actually on the bark itself. Look, there's a little scaly fungi just here. All sorts of different species.
What's this green?
Yes, that's Pleurococcus. And at this time of the year, this green is almost an algae there. Coats, you can always tell which is the north side of the tree because it's green. When you look at the two sides of it, it's just pale brown. That's a lichen as well. Really beautiful colours on these fungi. And lichen, they're sort of the primitive plants that don't really get much attention, really. Now, I've not been able to show you before because all the trees infected with honey fungus have been standing, and generally in the woodland I leave them there and they drop down and rot back and form the lovely woodland humus that's on the soil. But the bark is conveniently peeling here, and we just drove up. Now I'm just going to peel this bit of bark. It's quite big. Can you see there's all like little roots from the bark going into the parent wood?
So those are they plants? No. They're fungus, are they?
That's the fungus.
They look like little roots, don't they, of plants?
Exactly, and that's what honey fungus does. They got a special name. They're called rhizomorphs. And not rhizomes, that's a plant that puts out little growths under the ground. Things like some species of grass grows rhizomes under the ground and shoots up a new plant. Marram grass is another one that has rhizomes. But fungi, like this one, Rat has to put his beak in here as well. Rhizomes are one thing. This is called a rhizomorph. And I can pull the bark off completely. There we go. And there's a whole network of threads, and these go right from the bottom of the tree up to the top, and it's usually the invisible portion of the fungus which is growing between the bark and the heartwood here, and
they're like little filaments.
It's killed the whole tree, Matthew.
Just strangled it.
It's killed, yes, it's kind of strangled it. It's taken all the nutrition out that goes from the bark into the heartwood. So that's how deadly it is. It's one of those fungi species that actually is invasive. Some of them just break down dead wood into usable portions, then another fungi will take over. But this is kind of right at the beginning of the process of breaking down living tissue into tissue which that fungus, the honey fungus, can use. There's no treatment that you can use to inject the tree or spray the trees, and occasionally you do have casualties like this, which was a large oak tree. I saw it about 10 years ago, just beginning to show the first signs of honey fungus.
But look at that lovely oak timber in the middle.
Oh yes, that's still pretty good actually. So I'm not sure what to do with this, but out on the farm when I have windblown trees like this, so Storm Bert just took it over. Basically it just came over in a root socket and is laying across the woodland tracks there. So I cut it up yesterday with the chainsaw and brought it here, and I might make a nice seat out of it because there's permissive walks here at High Ash Farm, all free of charge, and you can go round and sit on some of the seats where we've had previous gales and hurricanes. I should name the seats after after the various gales we've had.
This can be yes, Hurricane Herbert.
This is Hurricane Bert. Yes, Herbert. I'd forgotten. Rat seems to have found something interesting under the next log. Look, you can always tell when he's on something because the tail starts wagging much faster than normal. And just look here, down here, Matthew. Look. Oh goodness, lovely little miniature bracket fungi growing down there. Really colourful.
It's a mycologist's dream, isn't
absolutely.
it? Looking at this like 10-foot bit of oak.
And this one, that's another dream. That one, that's The name's, it's a slime mould, that one.
Oh,
I think
lovely.
we better finish at that point. We'll repair to the truck and get some questions out.
Just bracket all this side, look.
Look at that. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Carry on moving. It's worse than the carry on moving.
Oh dear. I thought it was one man and his dog. We've repaired in the teeth of another gale, whatever this one is called. It's called something Dutch, this one, isn't it?
Yes, it's been named by the Dutch authorities because as it leaves East Anglia, and we're quite close to the coast here at Horace Farm, the storm is intensifying and it's going to deposit a vast amount of rain on the Low Countries and then whisk across to Germany. So it's goodbye to this current storm. I forget what it's called. There's just been too many of them. And that's one of the signs that I have noticed at Horace Farm over recent years is the change in our climate and the way it's behaving. It's far more storms than I've ever known before.
Got some questions. Paul and Jackie, the Baldwins, hello to you. For the last month, Chris, we've noticed a red kite taking up position at the very top of a 40-foot spruce tree in our neighbour's garden. He arrives just after dawn and stays there most of the morning, constantly crying in that loud, specific keening sound kites make when on the wing. This bird tends to disappear late in the morning, only to return the following day to the same place and making the same cry. What on earth could be the reason for this behaviour? And added to that, there's a photograph.
Yes, in the garden, and for scale, there's a magpie right on the red kite's tail.
The magpie's having a right go there, isn't he?
And it's a beautiful young male red kite. So I've identified the sex for you. The female red kite is much duller in its plumage, and you've got that lovely grey head. And they're called red kites, although the colour is with a inward forked tail is predominantly orange. And when red kites were named, there wasn't a name for orange, believe it or not. Hence we've got red admiral butterflies, which are also orange. Now, what is it doing? It's a juvenile bird, a young bird, and it's calling at the top of a tree, which is what they do to alert the parents that it needs feeding. And it has found a food source in your garden. Quite amazing. It's coming down to feed. They love sort of any meat product that you can put out, preferably uncooked. And it's a new trick farmers are doing. Farmers are learning to diversify. And in northern Yorkshire, up on the North York moors, there's a sheep farmer that's packed in sheep farming completely. And he started accidentally by throwing a sheep carcass out. It is a bit he couldn't quite reach, and a sheep had died and it had gone over, so he left it there, and he noticed about a week later there was about a dozen red kites feeding on the carcass. Now, surprisingly, kites, although the best place to have recently seen them in previous decades was in Wales, on the west coast of Wales. They got down to just a few pairs, with almost shot to extinction. They were deemed sort of real predators, and yet they're not. They're really carrion eaters, like carrion crows. Nearly always eat road casualties and anything that gets killed out on a farm. They'll come and peck the flesh off. But really, they were urban birds. In the Great Plague in London in the 1600s, they were actually eating the flesh off people who died from the plague. Pretty grim, but they were recognised as being very good at sort of clearing up carrion and detritus, and so they were protected way back then. But recently there's been some introductions from Spain and from Portugal in the early 1980s, and those introductions have been hugely successful. So it's unusual not to see red kite here at least once a week, and during the summer months much more than that. They nest in trees, in forks in trees, and they're a bit unusual because they like collecting odd things like crisp packets. Ladies' knickers have been found in the nests, and all sorts of bits of fabric. They've got a penchant for collecting and decorating the nest for the female to incubate the eggs. So they're really unusual, but very beautiful birds. And so that's what the bird is calling for. It's a youngster, just got its first fresh plumage on, and it's calling for mum and dad still to come and feed it. The best way you do that is sit in the top of a tree and scream your head off.
Darryl Thomas lives at Great Cressingham in Norfolk, and he says, we've got our own terrier with an attitude called Dave.
Oh, Rat, would you like to meet Dave? He's given me a really quizzical look.
But he says, I saw a great tit visit our bird box, usually occupied by blue tits in the spring. Being that it's the 22nd of November with frost on the ground, why would they be visiting a nest box? Is this typical behaviour?
Yes, it is typical behaviour. If I have a chance to explain it, birds respond to daylight. Now, generally, that's about 6 weeks before the shortest day. Now, if we flip to the other side, 6 weeks after the shortest day, so we're well into January, early February, that's when birds start looking for nest sites. And there's a gland at the back of the brain on birds, the pituitary gland, and it responds to light, but more importantly, it responds to the angle of the light that comes in through the retina. So birds get stimulated at this time of the year in visiting possible nest sites, although they know instinctively you don't start nesting yet. But all the jackdaws on the farm are already paired up, and most of them are busy visiting last year's nest boxes where they brought up. So it shows you that that's quite normal behaviour. Inspecting potential nest sites is really valuable at this time of the year, because birds have already got, like the mallard visiting the farm duck pond, already got their breeding plumage on, and they're trying to look their best already, as I do, you can see.
Well, they're like farmers, they plan ahead, don't
Yes,
they?
they do. Yes, and so nothing surprises me in nature. So it's completely normal behaviour. And sometimes at this time of the year, in the coldest months, blue tits, great tits, and even wrens will all roost together communally, and they'll use nest boxes. They're really secure and warm. And when you've got these driving winds, which we've got here today, coming straight down from the north, I could think of no better place than a cosy nest box.
Well, I'm going to head off to mine very shortly, but I'll just say that emails are welcome to chris@countrysidepodcast.co.uk.
Excellent. Look forward to next week.
Hot cocoa, the order of the day now, I think.
You're pushing the boat out now, Matthew. I've got no milk.
The ducks at High Ash Farm going in to roost for an evening. Hey everyone, it's Matthew here, and if you've been enjoying our countryside podcasts, we've got a small favour to ask.
Yes, Matthew. What we're going to do is to ask for a small donation to help run the podcast, and any surplus goes for conservation at High Ash Farm here. And so it's really important. We'd both love to keep the podcast going, and that duck agrees with me, I think.
Well, it's straightforward to donate. You can make a one-off donation or set up a small monthly contribution, and the address is highashfarm.com/podcast.
We're hugely grateful for any support. It means we can keep sharing the stories of the countryside, which I love doing each week, but it's that small amount of costs we need to cover. So thank you very much in advance. It's dusk at High Ash Farm. I've come back to the same area of woodland that I visited with Matthew earlier today, and it's the first time in over 60 episodes we had to pack in our podcast recording because of the rain which was coming horizontally through this area of successional woodland. And I didn't have a chance to explain some of the words that I introduced the podcast with. One was jinxing, which we did explain, the way that woodcock fly in this kind of zigzag pattern and makes them really suitable and exciting targets for sportsmen, as they're still a shot game bird. And the other is roding. And although we won't see roding at this time of the year, it's the name given to the way that woodcock fly in the spring, when they're kind of measuring out their territories on a particular route, which they repeat over and over again. And as they're flying round, they sort of croak like a frog, and then a high-pitched squeak at the end of it, and then they go on flying. And it's called roding because literally it's an old English measurement. A rod is a quarter, approximately, of a chain. So it's about 5 yards long. And although the woodcock's flying quite quickly, the wing beat is deceptively slow. And it's really unusual. And they fly along with their beaks, their long beaks facing downwards. So it's an old English measurement: rods, poles, chains, perches, and then eventually into acres as well, which is an area of square measurement. We use hectares now on the farm, 2.5 acres approximately for a hectare. And anyway, just as I arrived here, Rat was being a real nuisance, and he's sitting down. He's shivering like a jelly because the rain has passed over. The evening is beautifully clear, and I'm looking over to the west. The sun set about 45 minutes ago, so I'm almost in pure darkness. And as I arrived, right in front of where I'm standing, a barn owl just flew over this tusky grass in between the trees, just hunting for supper, and just flew past absolutely silently. So really, really beautiful. And I'm just looking over the top of these trees, Scots pine and oaks. Scots pine are sort of no colour at all the light has gone, and it just looks like a black wall of 25 feet tall Scots pines. And I'm just waiting for a woodcock to fly over the top, because where they spend their daytime in the woodland, particularly in this area that I'm standing on, they fly out onto the pastures which have been closely grazed, and they're searching for their supper. Oh, a bat just flew past. Although it's chilly, it's about -1 now. The temperature's suddenly dropped. The grass is crispy white all round me already from the earlier rain today. And this is an ideal time to just see that silhouette of those broad-winged birds flying over the top of this woodland to go out on the pastures for a supper of worms, which is their main diet. Anyway, that's the first time we've had to stop our podcast. Rat was being a real nuisance anyway, and when we got him back to the truck to answer your questions, he was soaked through, and Matthew's had to go home and wash his trousers because they're covered in dog paw prints. You do have to laugh sometimes. Anyway, if I see a woodcock on the way back through this grass, under the trees and back into the truck, I'll turn the recorder back on. But it looks as though I've drawn a blank, but nevertheless it's just lovely to stand out here. The stars are actually shining above my head now, and I'm just looking round the area of grass and see if I can see that barn owl again. That was a stunning sight, a silent, ghostly bird just flying right past me. Beautiful.
This is a Soundyard production. Music is by Tom Harris.
Hello, it's Anna and Sophie from Soundyard here. Our new service, Spoken Stories, is an incredible experience where we record the stories and voice of your loved one, which you can then hold on to forever.
It makes for an incredible gift, and anyone can make one. Take a listen to this. It beautifully captures the thoughts and feelings of life from a 6-year-old's perspective.
I'm 6 years old and I love running around. I can run very, very fast, but I'm even faster on my bike. That's why I love biking. It makes me feel energetic. And also, I bike loads of places. I like doing sports like dodgeball. The people that are in charge in the world, well, I think that there should be no one in charge at all. So everyone's in charge. So there's no person that's in charge. So everyone is a bit more free. That's what I think. Well, what I try to change at the moment is global warming. It's when us humans litter, destroy the planet and all its nature. That's global warming. It makes me feel sad. And also, if us humans keep doing that, and that it could destroy the whole planet Earth, and then all of the human beings will be destroyed. I try to stop global warming. And also, in my coat pocket, I have a bit of Kit Kat litter I found on the floor once. I love the planet more than anything. Grown-ups should be stopping global warming, because grown-ups are more powerful than kids. But if kids can be more powerful than grown-ups, kids and grown-ups can work together and do it. Kids should be able to do the same things as grown-ups. They should have more rights. Well, I love myself because that I believe in a lot of things. That's what I love about myself. I like being a kid, but because when I'm a grown up, I'm gonna have my own kids because that's what I want. And also, I'm a bit worried to have kids, and I'm still gonna be a kid for a long, long time. So I'm glad that's actually going to happen. I'm glad I'm going to stay a kid for a long time. I'm going to have kids because I want to know what it feels like to be a parent. I'm going to be a good parent.
Isn't that just gorgeous? If you'd like to find out more about recording a spoken story of your own, or you'd like to buy this as a present for someone, take a look at our website, www.soundyard.org/spoken stories, and take advantage of our introductory offer. Alternatively, you can get in touch via email, hello@soundyard.org.
And if the internet isn't an option, you can leave a message with your details on our landline number. It's 01603 273 899, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.